what just happened in semi-final 2. I thought semi-final 1 was a bloodbath, but we lost a couple in semi-final 2, which I don't think many people were expecting until some of those performances proved otherwise. So I'm here to talk about why these 6 performances did not qualify for the finals, what happened, and then I'm going to rank them with regard to my tier list, which I created for my first one. And remembering, this tier list is not about me. It's not about what I think. It's about how I perceive them within the context of Eurovision. Okay, maybe it is about what I think. However, it doesn't mean I don't like the song. So through here, we're going to talk a little bit about what went wrong, what my personal opinions are of the song, and then something a little bit more interesting regarding one of the acts. But Montenegro kind of had the death spot, right? Which is number 2, which is interesting because Poland had that and went through anyway from the semi-finals. I think that death spot is overhyped a little bit, but we know that nobody's ever won the final from the position of 2. However, Montenegro, vocally, she was great. There were a couple of problems when looking back. There was 2 parts where her voice kind of cracked or broke, which, if you don't listen carefully, you wouldn't be able to see. It didn't affect her really at all. However, this song was never going to get through, no matter how good the performance was. This is a nice song. However, I feel like it's an overdone kind of ballad, and it did not connect with people. I feel like some may have found it a little bit boring or a little bit exhausting. However, vocally, she really performed. However, the thing is with Montenegro, I'm going to put it up here because it was really never in the race. There was no way this could have gotten through. At the kind of ballad that it is not going to be connecting with the people as a whole. It's exhausted, and it's exhausted a very long time ago. Which brings me to Serbia, which suffered the same fate, in my opinion. And not just in my opinion, in many others as well. I love this song. This song was performed amazingly, vocally incredible. The performance itself, the staging, I found personally really creative. The figures that he had there as well, kind of going at him. I'm not sure if they were like demons or whatnot, or his subconscious or his psyche or whatever. That worked really well. When they were dragging him across the stage and he was still singing, really delivering those on-point vocals, I was shocked that this didn't get through. I was rooting for this. I threw votes behind it, but it didn't get through. And suffering the same fate as Montenegro, as many people have been saying, it's an outdated Balkan ballad. It just is. 15 to 20 years ago and may have performed really well. Molitva won in 2007 in their first time with a ballad. But in my opinion, this song had so much dynamic development, textural development. Where I think this needs to go, because I did vote for it, this is a deserved finalist. I really thought this was going to get through. It is what it is. The people voted. That's how democracy works. I did spend $4.50 Australian dollars on it, but I'm not going to starve because of it, really. But that's a deserved finalist in my eyes. Let me know your thoughts on that one, though, because it was kind of polarizing. Whenever I go back into these YouTube videos to look at them, everyone is saying, doesn't matter which one I look at. Oh, this was robbed. I can't believe this didn't get through. All this kind of stuff. The same thing for everyone, because everyone's got their own loves and likes, right? However, Czechia still had those comments going on in it. But were they thinking about the original? Is that what they were thinking? Because this performance was not it. It did not work. The staging, it is what it is. I don't know, but vocally, no. He was flat most of the time. It's just really unfortunate. There was that sad point where he missed that second chorus entry. And if you look back at the video, it's not that he missed the entry. It actually started a little bit before then.
When you said you love me, it almost moved me.
I'd say a couple of bars before that entry, you could see he was actually off. He was off from a timing perspective. So something was happening in his ear. We don't know what was going on. We didn't know what he could hear and what we couldn't hear, but he missed that entry as a result. But that wasn't it. This was all over the place. And I felt really bad for him watching it because we know likely he can achieve a lot better. In my opinion, this was a car crash, but I watched every second of it because the vocals were just not there tonight, or this morning in my case. And this was one of those shocks, right? A lot of people, especially a couple of months ago when the song was released, really thought that this was going to be qualifying. This was the Belgium 2024 and the Belgium 2025, I guess. Australia, on the other hand, unfortunately for most Australians, this is starting for us at 5 a.m. And Gojo was number 1 in the running order, which sucked for a lot of people, right? But whatever, you can look back on it on YouTube. We can't vote for our own anyway. But I was shocked. I was shocked at how poor this performance was. And I think that may come from a potential lack of experience from Gojo. I didn't know who he was. Obviously, he's a big artist in Australia and much so now. But I certainly didn't know who he was before this as an Aussie myself. So, being on the Eurovision stage is massive. It's huge. Vocally, it didn't work. It did get better as it went on, but vocally, in general, it did not work. Again, kind of like Czechia's performance, he was off for most of the time, in my opinion. And I don't even know if it's in my opinion. I think that's quite objective. When we look at the theme of this, I think this was lent on a little bit too much. The innuendo, the sexual innuendo behind this whole milkshake man thing that Khalees in 2002 kind of coined. My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. He was prancing around topless for half the time. I guess Armenia was prancing around topless for most of the time, and clearly still people have a problem with Erica. This was overly, unnecessarily, and very lamely sexualized. I think people were very shocked that this didn't get through. Obviously, we know how badly the odds get it. They were at about 80% sure that Australia would qualify. Given that performance, he looked very uneasy and very nervous. And if you go back to the YouTube clip straight up, look at it from the beginning, that close-up where he was like on TV selling his milkshake.
Come and take a sip from my special cup. I heard that you could use a little pick-me-up. Walk and get you high when you're oh so sad. It's the milk.
He looked uncomfortable. And, it is what it is. Obviously, he's in front of, millions and millions of people watching. That's a very scary thing. But I think this is what really doomed this song, was the performance and was the gimmicky, lame aspect of it. This, in my opinion, could have gone either way. It's really hard to know because the song itself is interesting. The staging itself was somewhat innovative, but given the performance, I think if the performance was better, it would have been a deserved qualifier. Given what it was, unlike the car crash of Czechia, I think this still could have gone either way, and it's hard to know. And like Australia, Ireland's really did not work. Vocally, she was incredibly weak. She was off flat for half of it. It did get it much better, especially when the harmonies came on. But I think the biggest problem with this was it was tacky. It did tap into, your late 90s, early 2000s Europop vibe, your Aqua vibe. However, my main gripe with this, and I'm not sure if Europe shared this problem and the Australian voters shared this problem, was the absolute... I can't wrap my head around this theme. I understand that they are talking about something a dog did for us for scientific advancement. And she states, and I'm not sure if it's a direct quote within the song, that we would not have flown to the moon if it wasn't for Laika. Now, that's absolutely bullshit. I'm sorry. You do not need to put a dog in a bloody rocket, shoot it up into space, let it die a horrible, stressful death, and then say it was brave. What this was doing was celebrating the fact that a dog went up to space and tried to present this alternate reality to absolve us from our human guilt from the horrible things that happened to that dog. And it didn't work from a thematic perspective. It's like giving thanks and then hoping that Laika's having a party in space. No, the dog died a horrible death. I'm sorry, done. That's it. So the problem, I think, was the theme of this. You had the dog in a spacesuit marching as if it was going on a mission. What is that? This dog was forced. And that's just the theme in itself. She's got a sweet voice vocally. Like I said, there were problems at the beginning. Halfway through, I think it definitely elevated with that key change, but it was a little too late that this did not connect with the viewers from a potential outdated Europop, which I'm a big fan of. I love Aqua. I saw them live when they came here to Australia 13 years ago. And whilst it did grow, I think that people cottoned on into the weirdness of this theme, and it wasn't as heartfelt as as they wanted it to be. I think this is going as well into borderline could have gone any way. The reason why is that like Australia, with a little bit better of a vocal performance, and probably with more creative staging, this could have gotten through. I don't know if Ireland came dead last. I really don't. I think that space is for Georgia. And I think Georgia would have come dead last. And here's the thing with Georgia. They're kind of doomed every year. I would be inclined to put it here with the no chance that we all know it was doomed. And I do believe that. But just hold up, because Georgia every year delivers quality, except last year when they actually qualified. That song was just on accelerate the whole time. But look, regardless about Firefighter, I love Georgia's entries year in, year out, because they are creative. They come in with what they want to show us. However, this was a bit different because there was controversy surrounding this. Why did this not do well? First and foremostly, because the song did not connect, in my opinion. That's why I said that we all know that this is doomed. This stand stood no chance. But why didn't the song connect? And here's what I'm about to say. Hold up for a moment, because this was one of the most creative songs, in my opinion, in Eurovision 2025. And I wanted to make a separate video about it. But I didn't want it to be the main focus because I didn't want the Georgian government to come after me. This song was undoubtedly a political propaganda piece. I'm sorry, it was. And I'm not apologizing for that. I'm just saying I'm sorry, not sorry, because we all knew that it was. Now let's take a look at it really, really quickly. If you look at this from firstly the perspective of the lyrics, and then from the perspective of the music, this was about freedom. Right? Lyrically, there is nothing about freedom in this from a lyrical perspective. Her perspective of freedom was the nationalistic pride. It was having pride in where you're from. It's having pride in the nature, in where you live. There was nothing about human rights. There was nothing about the freedom for people to be able to say what they want to say. Nothing about the freedom for people to have their own self-worth. So look at the lyrics quite literally, as in freedom, I'm living my life with a smile. How much more can we not connect this to something like North Korea, where they're all just smiling and repeating the same mantra about how great the leader is, how great, in this case, the country is, and for the freedom that it gives. When we look at the staging here, we had white flag. Now that means surrendering, but that means peace. And then, of course, the nationalistic aspects of it, the dances, the dress, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's not pretend this is not a propaganda piece. Musically, it starts off in 5/4 time signature, or it starts off in 6/8, but then it goes to 5/4 time signature. If you found that this was unsettling, that's the point. Is that not saying, we're going to create discomfort for you, we're going to create that, and then we're going to take that discomfort away and make you that little bit more comfortable so that you accept that new reality, and we're going to call that freedom. If you don't know much about why I'm banging on about this being a propaganda piece, is because there's a lot of talk about Mariam being pro-Ukraine back in 2022 and then suddenly shifting and doing many things for the government and performances, which are now the Georgian Dream aligning themselves with Russia. I'm not criticizing the Georgian Dream. You are great for Georgia. So this is where this thought process comes from. Somebody who is now seemingly aligning themselves with an oppressive government who has taken measures to restrict people's freedoms, police brutality with protests. That this is why I'm getting behind a conspiracy theory that maybe this song is political propaganda, is about telling Georgians that freedom is loving your country and being patriotic. Now, when you do not get votes, Georgia, when you do not get into the finals, that is Europe rejecting you. That is Europe rejecting you for what you know freedom is. In that case, once that happens, which has happened, you should not be aligning yourself with the oppression of the European people. So not putting this song through can potentially send the message to Georgians, which is what potentially the government wants to do. This is a theory. I'm not actually saying this is happening. Potentially what the government wants to do is take this time to tell Georgians that you are free and we're showing our culture to the world. However, the Europeans and Australia is going to reject that. In rejecting that, we are now forced to say this way of life, in accordance to the government, is the way of life which will keep you free and move you forward. On the other hand, if they had gotten to the finals and they had performed really well, this is then saying that the world agrees with how patriotism represents freedom. So it's a double-edged sword here. Whether they lose or whether they don't, the message comes home that either freedom and patriotism go hand in hand, or freedom and patriotism go hand in hand, but everyone's rejecting you for it, but you need to show your love for your country. I just put this that we have no choice. We knew it was all doomed. However, this is what I was saving this for. This song, in my opinion, is a Eurovision wasn't ready. It is phenomenal from a compositional perspective. Phenomenal vocally. The staging was amazing. The unsettling feeling it gets with your 5/4 time signature moving into a 6/8 time signature, which is a little bit more balanced. The use of jazz chords, the use of those harmonies moving from one to another gives you a James Bond kind of feel, you know? Mission Impossible, by the way, is also in 5/4, the Mission Impossible theme song. This, in my opinion, was one of the best songs and is one of the best songs in Eurovision 2025. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to suck up to the Georgian government. I'm saying that because it's true, in my opinion. However, what is also somewhat undeniable is that this is political propaganda. I don't care, though. For me, it's about music, and I'm here for it. Let me know your thoughts about what I've been putting here. I'd love to hear your comments. Thank you so much for watching. What a crazy Eurovision this is going to be. I cannot wait for the weekend. Until next time.